The way I see this, and that would be my very first answer, we may have failed in the ambition with which we set out initially. My take on it is exploration will succeed. It may not succeed as quickly as we all wish at times. And as Jean-Jacques has mentioned, I have taken exactly the same. I was given a certain task and then I thought I probably revise it a little bit. My retirement is only 3 months away. So I thought maybe instead of reporting to you dryly what the European exploration strategy is, I give you my personal reflections as an astronaut and an ESA staff member who is just 3 months before retirement, which gives me probably some liberty to inject some ideas that you normally would maybe not do. But before we talk about the strategy of exploration, I need to tell you first what is exploration. And now you witness an astronaut without any training, so that was the wrong button. Here we go. Okay, we all have an understanding of what exploration is, although it is very difficult to define what exploration is, and I'm not going to define what exploration is. I will not make this attempt here, but if I give my personal reflections, you should understand how I see it. And we haven't talked about this image, Jean-Jacques and I. He mentioned Apollo 8, which changed the game, and it was the same for me. This image really changed the way I looked at the world. And what comes to my mind immediately is a word of Antoine Saint-Exupéry. Man sieht nur mit dem Herzen gut, das Wesentliche ist für das Auge unsichtbar. You only see good with your heart. The important things are invisible to your eye. I think that image really shows what is behind that sentence. For me, it is all a difference that a human being took this image and not a robot. So that is one aspect of exploration. And the other one, that is this one. And exploration is not only humans, of course. And everyone who was here in Europe, and probably not only in Europe, was excited when Rosetta finally arrived at the comet Churyumov-Gerasimenko. I'm not going to talk about that. Andreo Accomazzo from ESOC is here and who will do that. I promised to him that I will cut my speech short so that he has additional minutes. Please take note of that because he has very interesting stuff to tell you. But it certainly was an endeavor that made me proud to work for the European Space Agency. But nevertheless, with these two images, one thing is missing, and that is this one. Sometimes life is really interesting, because when I entered the Grand Hotel yesterday, into the elevator, who comes out of the elevator was this gentleman. Bruce, where are you? Here, Bruce McCandless. For me, this is the image that tells the story that Jean-Jacques just mentioned. Humans and space, but humans also belong into space. And I would not be an astronaut if I would not phrase it like that. Now, when I have given you the way I look at exploration, some words on the strategy, and before I share with you a few details of the European strategy, I would like to report quickly about two statements that I heard from administrators and director generals. In 1996, I am fortunate enough to be a member of the Sardines, the NASA astronaut class 1996. 7 of them are here. I think we are the biggest class, is that correct? Represented here at least today. Yes, Spanky. And I will not disclose who the NASA administrator was at that time, but Training took us to all the sites at NASA, and we met the NASA administrator, and I forgot what the problem was between ESA and NASA at that time. But I will never forget the statement that he made: the Europeans will come along eventually. So the Europeans will come along eventually. I forgot what it was about, to be quite honest. I don't know whether it had to do with rockets, with the space station, but that sentence sticks with me. And it shows me that the world looks at Europe a little bit different than the Europeans look at Europe, which makes, of course, a lot of sense. Now, the other statement highlights that from a different perspective, and since the person is with us in the room, I can disclose the name. It was Jean-Jacques. And that was on the 6th of December in 2007, if I am not mistaken. And it was the attempted launch of Columbus, which then in the end had to be scrubbed into 2008 and so on. But the statement that got me there was, I don't know whether you still recall when you addressed the people. Before we arrived to this point, we had to talk to 50 governments, 50, in Europe over the course of the program. Europe is different than any other partner in the in the ISS program. Many countries in Europe participate, and all these governments don't stay the same over the course of the program. And in some areas, the changes happen rather frequently, making the life of the agency not necessarily more easy. That is another thing that one needs to take into account, and that, of course, also shapes my view on the efforts to come up with a space exploration strategy. And having said that, we do have, I wouldn't call it really an exploration strategy, but we have a solid block, or we have solid building blocks out of which a strategy eventually will develop. And everything was mentioned. ESA has always, as the first attempt, tried to push the frontier of knowledge. You see it, it is one of the guiding principles in the strategy. Global cooperation is key to the European Space Agency and to Europe as a continent and as a society. So also that should not be a surprise. Innovation is important for our economy to grow and to survive, and Jean-Jacques has mentioned as well. And about inspiration, I do not need to talk. By the way, not only astronauts inspire the young generation. Is Frida here? Christo, do you know? I can't see her, but she was supposed to be here. But that was the most inspiring talk that I heard this morning. And if you are here, I would like to thank you for that. So inspiration, the inspiration aspect, the education aspect is part of it. And to name to you a few things part of this strategy, Europe, of course, cannot decide we will go to the moon and land a human being on the moon. That's very obvious because we don't have a transportation system to do that. So how do you develop a strategy in the situation in which we are in and where we hardly can be on these kind of endeavors be the key driver? And the first question that you have to ask yourself is, where do we want to go? And in Europe, we have very clearly identified low Earth orbit, Moon and Mars as the future destinations of our space activities. And what are the building blocks to engage with the various partners? Jean-Jacques has already mentioned that, of course, the United States, Russia, and in the future China and others are key partners for our exploration endeavors. I would suggest to rethink the cooperation with JAXA, with our Japanese colleagues, because if I look at ESA, if I look at the Japanese Space Agency, we have very similar interests, and maybe there can be done more together. One thought from my side. And the other two things I would like to mention in this context, these are personal observations. You always hear and you read it in our strategy as well, the famous term human-robotic partnership. Now, I don't know who has invented it. It probably is, I don't know, something that we have to do in order to be able to sell what we want to do to politicians, decision makers. In my humble opinion, this is a misnomer. I am not aware of any robot who has invented himself to fly, for instance, to a comet. All the robots that are available have been invented by human beings. They are just tools for us to explore. That is how I see them. And if we can transform a little bit this view of human-robotic partnership really in exploration without stressing humans and robots all the time, we might get a step further in the direction that I would like to see. For ESA, I think we see a very good example where we had been successful in the past and where we see elements in the future. Transportation is one part that is important in any future exploration endeavor. And I just quote one example, which is ATV, where I think ESA has demonstrated repetitively 5 times that we have really remarkably on-the-spot delivered resources to sustain and support the International Space Station. What is the consequence of that? ESA today partners up with NASA on the Orion module building and providing the European service module, hopefully not only for 1 and 2 flights, but for more. So the key thing, and this is also entering our exploration strategy, that ESA becomes the partner of choice for our international partners to achieve what we want to do together in cooperation. And I haven't asked Christian how much time I have left, but I know that I have promised to Andrea that I give some time back with that. I would like to come to a close, and a suggestion. It is not it is not a final answer, but maybe the European strategy includes this term that humans in space and space, we are redefining the possible. Thank you very much.